Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm convening the special Fairfax Town Council meeting, Wednesday, June 17, 2015, convening a few minutes after 7. And I'd like a roll call.
Sure. Councilmember Weinsoff? Here. Councilmember Reed? Here. Vice Mayor Goddard? Here. Councilmember Lax?
Here.
Mayor Kohler?
Here. Okay, don't we do the Pledge of Allegiance?
You can. We don't normally for special meetings, but you can.
Well, we'll forego it. It's not on the agenda. So I'd like a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Garrett, would you like to do the staff report?
Sure. So the reason we're all here this evening for a special meeting is the council's been asked to conduct a forum on the application on the Fairfax Theater to ABC for a beer and wine permit to serve in their theater. And so maybe as some background, the town actually received, at this point, 110 emails regarding the topic. Of that, 5 were in support, 105 were in opposition. But based on the level of emails, Councilmember or Vice Mayor Goddard indicated that she thought it'd be helpful for the council to have a special meeting in order to allow the community an opportunity to share their comments with the council. Staff thinks that's a good idea. And as clarification, we should point out that town code does not prevent the theater from serving alcohol. And the other thing is the town has no control over the ABC licensing process. There's some limited options available to town, but we do not have any control over this process. So this is more of a advisory and opportunity for the town to share with the council its concerns. Now, that being said, some of the options that could be available to the council are you could officially direct staff to actually file a protest to ABC. How that would work is there's an official form. Staff would fill it out. ABC, then they take it. They have their legal counsel review it for valid concerns. And if it's valid, along with the other written protests they may have received, they would conduct a hearing. People who file a protest are required to attend the hearing. Otherwise, their protest is deemed withdrawn. That's one option. The other option that was listed is you can always talk to the theater operator who was invited this evening. And I'm actually not sure if he's here yet, but you can always ask him, share your concerns, share the community's concerns, and indicate if he's willing to work with you on some of those issues while still keeping his business model, making it intact for what he wants to do. 3, which is a different option that's not listed in here, is in our discussions with ABC, towns could always send to ABC some recommended restrictions that ABC may want to consider. ABC indicates that they are willing to take a look at that. If it's warranted, they may impose it, but there are no guarantees. So that's one option. And the other option is you can take no action, but perhaps if this is an issue that you want to address in the future or provide a little more clarity or policies relating to it, we could always schedule a future workshop to talk about those type of issues and options available to the town. So that being said, at this point, I think the last thing we wanted to point out, attached to the staff report, there is a letter that the operator did send to the various emails that he had received. We did attach a sample of restrictions that ABC has imposed in similar type theaters. It doesn't mean that would apply in this situation, but those are just some provisions that they had applied for in the past. And the other thing is, staff, we need to point out that we're not experts in the ABC licensing process. We have talked to ABC staff. We have talked about a variety of questions, so we have some answers to that. We have a lot of data, but just to point out that we have limited actual knowledge of how it all works. So with that concludes the staff report, unless there are any questions.
David, you might want to turn your mic on since we're being filmed. Okay. But that's a good point. And then just a quick question for Garrett. Also attached to the staff report is the ABC protest form, and I believe in our discussions, it's my understanding that this is the form of protest. They accept emails are not things that they consider. Is that correct, or would it?
That's correct. They only accept actual written protests on their forms. That's what they would consider, and that's what they turn over to their legal division to review for validity.
Okay, thank you. John, did you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to add that in addition to this filled out form, you also have to show up at the hearing to have that form counted by the ABC.
Yeah, and Garrett did mention that.
Yeah, it's true, but it bears repeating since.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Peter?
Garrett, do you know what the criteria is that the ABC uses to decide whether a protest is valid or not?
They did not actually share with me that. What they did was there are some forms online that would indicate possible grounds you would have to point to, like if it's a violation of some land use or zoning code or there's some other issues. They didn't really get in specificity and indicate what would constitute valid grounds for that. Oh, but I did forget one thing. The reason that we're having this meeting was to keep that option open of official protests, because all comments and forms are due by June 24th.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that when I questioned ABC about that particular question, it was that it needed to be on this particular protest form. And often what happens in these situations is people say, you know, hundreds of letters were written, and those are not valid means of protestation. So the form needs to go.
Okay, so with that, we'll open the public comment period, and I think Mr. Corkill's here, but it may be a good idea to wait until we hear from the public, and then we'll have you come up and talk about your plans and, you know, different things that you've heard. Maybe that might adjust things. So with that, if people want to come up and speak on this, you have 3 minutes. And you can stand along the corner if that works for you. And if you feel comfortable, give your name and address, please.
Sure, my name's David.
Turn on the mic, so.
Do I hold it or just? David Finan, 950 Butterfield Road in San Anselmo. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Ross Valley Community Collaborative, which is made up of approximately 20 adults representing 12 key sectors of our community, including our schools, government, faith-based organizations, businesses, etc. We also have 2 high school student representatives that have recently joined our group, and our goal is to address the overall health and wellness factors in our community. I've worked in the Ross Valley District for 16 years, and prior to that I worked for 17 years in the adolescent alcohol and drug prevention and treatment field. To start, let me say that this really isn't about the Fairfax Theater in particular, although I know this conversation is. For me, this is about the health and wellness of our community and the health and wellness of our community's young people. And fair or not, the theater's application to serve alcohol has generated this discussion, one which, in my opinion, is long overdue. This is not just about the theater and whether or not its owner's application to serve alcohol is approved. This is about our community's social norms and whether or not we're willing to take a hard look at the data and then make decisions accordingly. I want to say in Marin County, the data year after year with key health indicators such as adult obesity, high school graduation rates, violent crime, premature death, access to a doctor or dentist, we're one of the healthiest communities or counties in the entire state of California. However, Marin County consistently is at or near the bottom in adult excessive drinking rates, which is another key indicator of overall health in the community. The data for Marin County clearly shows that we don't get it when it comes to alcohol use and abuse, regardless of how healthy we look with other indicators. And I'll say that in Fairfax and San Anselmo, if you look at how our kids behave and the decisions that they make, which I believe is directly correlated to the adults' behavior around them, the data doesn't look good. At Drake High School, 2013-14 California Healthy Kids data, in 9th grade, 24% of students have used alcohol. Countywide, in the last 30 days, countywide it's 20%. In 11th grade, that number jumps to 54%. In the county, it's 41%. We are really ground zero in this county, and frankly, Marin County in the state, for youth alcohol and drug use and abuse. Clearly, we have a community-wide issue pertaining to excessive drinking, and I believe it's fair to assert that our community norms around drinking and drug use have impacted our children. Our kids take the lead from important adults in their lives, and I would say that they're certainly doing that with this topic. I'm opposed to adding yet another location in Fairfax where alcohol is accessible, making it the 34th establishment in town. The national average is 2.7 establishments per 1,000 people in a community. In Fairfax, there's 4.2 establishments per 1,000 people. One factor that plays a role in overall community drinking is the density of drinking establishments in a community. Based on this data, I just shared with you, I would suggest that Fairfax needs less drinking establishments, not more.
Excuse me, Mr. Fanan, you've gone over the 3 minutes.
So I'm hoping you will make a decision to direct staff to fill out a protest form. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shelby Lamott, 56 Manor Road, Fairfax. I don't have any specific data or facts, and thank you, David, for enlightening us, but I'm speaking from my heart about our community. We have an incredibly great, will be more great when the general plan, walkable community, and our kids, our teenagers are looking for places to go that is walkable. They don't have to get in cars. And the movie theaters is one of those places where they can meet up and they can go and be together as friends and see a good movie and not have alcohol in their faces. And I think that in setting the example of providing places for our children to go that is healthy and a good gathering place and in town, lots of eyes, we're all here to support our kids in healthy ways. There's this incredible coalition going on supporting our children to not partake in alcohol and drugs in high school, and that will lead to our healthier community long term. So I'm just kind of rambling because I feel strongly about this. When I saw this come up on the agenda, I just thought, oh my gosh, we can't, this is one of the few places where teenagers feel comfortable going. I mean, we have a youth center, but it's kind of not cool sometimes, and so it's just an alternative, and we need alternatives instead of hanging out behind the ball field or leftover places. We need to celebrate our kids in healthy ways, and this is one of the places we can do that and allow them to go and not have alcohol presented. So I would implore of Mr. Corkle also to maybe drop this as this community could maybe support the movie theater in other ways to promote use and do like a youth film festival or something that gets the kids using the theater in a healthy way. I'm just rambling, but I think that we really need to protest this licensing in our town. We've got enough, we don't need more, and it's certainly nothing against the theater, it's just a support of our healthy teens. So, thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers? Mallory? Or, sir, would you like to speak? Okay, Mallory, please come up. And if you could mention your name and address.
Mallory Geithheim, Willow Avenue. I just think this is a terrible idea on all levels, besides the kids. It's bad enough that we have to deal with cell phones and people talking. And when you drink alcohol, you just lose consciousness about
Can I just remind folks to put your phones on silent or turn them off? That's the second time.
That was good timing.
Sorry, Mallory.
No, that's okay. That kind of proves my point here. People, when they drink alcohol, they lose consciousness of how loud they're talking. And at the normal rate, when people are talking, it's annoying. With alcohol, it's going to be worse. If somebody really needs to drink around the movie, then go next door and get a drink. But do not, the odor, the behavior, the kids, it's for many reasons. It's like, what are you guys thinking? I think it's totally wrong, and I don't support it.
Thank you, Mallory. Any other speakers? If you want to come up, don't be shy. If you feel comfortable, give your name and address.
Hi, Kelsey Fernandez, 18 Sayus Avenue. And I'm just going to read this because I don't like speaking in public. I wrote this letter actually to you earlier today, and I just want to first of all thank you so much for holding this special session. It means so much to be a part of this community and to be heard, and also for Mr. Corkle for showing up to hear what our concerns are. I'm strongly opposed to allowing alcohol to be served at the Fairfax Theater because I believe we need to protect the very few places in Fairfax where youth and families can be entertained without alcohol present. It's been proven through numerous studies as well as basic common sense that children repeat behavior that is modeled by their parents and other role models, and that telling them just say no doesn't work. Recently, Marin County has funded local coalitions whose primary goal is to reduce the rate of underage alcohol and drug use and abuse, and studies have shown that a community-wide approach is the most effective strategy in affecting change around this issue. This requires schools, parents, youth organizations, law enforcement, and local government, and businesses, and each of the 12 sectors of our community to work together in combating this issue. I would like the council and also Mr. Corkle of Cinema West to consider your responsibility in relation to the youth in Ross Valley. I know that Mr. Corkle has argued that he must offer beer and wine at Fairfax Theater to stay competitive, but I do not believe there is any proof of that statement whatsoever, nor do I believe that the town of Fairfax will suffer if the theater continues to offer only non-alcoholic beverages. When discussing the reason for serving beer and wine at the theater, Mr. Corkle wrote, "Would most community members prefer viewing a movie in this environment? We think so," meaning Cinema West. But most importantly for us, our nearest competitor, Cinemark, thinks so. Based on the community response to the application for a liquor license, I do not believe that that is a correct statement. I don't think that most of the community members in Fairfax would prefer this change. I don't believe it's worth the potential risk to our youth to add alcohol to this venue so Cinema West can stay competitive with Cinemark. In addition, I believe that offering alcohol at the theater could potentially hurt the surrounding local businesses where adults often go to have a meal and beer, wine, or spirit before the movie. I talked to many friends and they said that's their routine, is they go out and they have, they're basically, spending their dollars at the local businesses that have been here and having a meal before they go to the film. And they might be at the film for 2 hours and then they can go back if they would like to have another adult beverage with adults. The town of Fairfax is in a position to make an important stand on this issue with very far-reaching implications. For the past year, I've been working with a broad range of concerned citizens and decision makers in Marin to try to make a difference and protect youth from the effects of underage alcohol use. The issues related, I'm going to start talking really fast because I'm sure my time's almost up. The issues are, drinking alcohol during developmental years can permanently cause brain damage now that we know with new studies that the brain is not fully developed until the age of 25. Youth who start drinking before age 15 are 5 times more likely to develop alcohol dependence or abuse. I won't go into the others. I
Ms.
just want to say
Fernandez,
quick.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
you've gone over your time, but thank you for your thoughts. Appreciate that. Next speaker. If you could state your name and address.
Yes. Hi, my name is Jesse Taylor, Vermont, 66 Crest Road, Fairfax. And I am a lifetime resident of Fairfax, and I just wanted to explain the reasons that I do support Fairfax theaters getting a liquor license. First is just to remind everyone the experience that they are proposing, including, is my time accurate?
I was just looking, he's starting it.
Okay.
Just go ahead, ignore that person over there.
The experience that they're proposing is not simply just to sell alcohol, but to provide a dinner and a movie experience. This experience is nothing new. It's been tried very successfully around the country in many large cities and small towns across America. And while other film cinemas do serve liquor, such as the Raffel, they don't provide the entire experience of lounge seating and an expanded food menu. And the possibility of drinking to an excess while going through this experience is much more minimal than at other establishments that do have liquor licenses. And to the one point that was made as far as the enjoyment of family-friendly affairs and having an establishment having a liquor license, I think Iron Springs Brew Pub provides a wonderful example of a place that is great for families that also happens to serve alcohol. Many people enjoy that establishment, and I think the same will be true of Fairfax Theater. Another point that I'd like to make as far as underage drinking is that a fair amount of underage drinking to excess happens in the home and at gatherings where parents may or may not be present, and many actions have been taken to enforce those the places where it does happen, such as having fines for serving alcohol in the home to underage minors. And most underage drinkers are not going to be going to establishments with a liquor license to binge drink or drink to excess. Furthermore, almost every establishment is going to be paying very strict attention to who they're carding and making sure that the people they are serving are in fact 21. So I think that the fear of children either getting a large amount of alcohol or even one drink is probably going to be quite minimal, and it hasn't proven to be a problem at other places such as Iron Springs Brew Co., for example. One last point is that I really have enjoyed Fairfax Theater's promise to kind of keep staying on the forefront. I remember several years ago when they brought 4K cinema to the first screen in the county, and it was very easy to entice friends from around Marin and the Bay Area to come out to this state-of-the-art theater. And I look forward to once again enticing friends to a different experience that they might not be able to get from all over the Bay Area, which would, I can introduce them to all the many other businesses around the Fairfax. And that is something that I think would be well served to support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So just 1 second, Garrett, do you think we can get that timer under control? It appears to be giving people lots of time. Okay. So wait 1 second. I just want to remind folks to put your cell phones on vibrate.
I'm disarmed. I apologize.
Great. Okay. Well, if you could state your name and address.
Don Carney, 32 Mountain View Road. I work for the YMCA. I run the Marin County Youth Court. Youth Court's been around for 11 years. 90% of the kids we see are behind substance charges, a whole lot of them alcohol. I want to talk a little bit about environmental prevention. Because I'm in this field, I do a lot of harm reduction, and I work with all the coalitions throughout the county. The most developed coalition is in Novato. That's the oldest. That's the one that's been the most focused. Between 2012 and 2014, we brought 11th grade monthly use down by 10%, both alcohol and marijuana, by working as a community coalition with strong environmental prevention. Environmental prevention means stopping the spread of alcohol being connected to anything it's not already connected to. This is just part of that landscape of prevention efforts that yields fruit. So I would deplore another liquor license in Fairfax. I wonder if our zip code or census tract, that's how ABC tracks, is saturated. If it's saturated, it has to be special circumstances around convenience or necessity. The applicant has to prove convenience or necessity. I don't know if that paperwork's been done or if that threshold's been met. But for the kids' sake, in the past 10 years, I've been to 15 funerals for young people in Marin County behind substances. I don't want to go to any more. I'm very heartened by bringing down the drinking and the marijuana use in Novato in 2 years by 10%. I think the rest of the coalitions in the county think that's a good idea, and I think this is just the wrong place for this license to be let. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could state your name and address, please.
Helen Lang, 2 Agatha Court, San Anselmo. And I asked David to let me finish what he was going to say, so I'll take the time first to do that and then say something myself. Yeah. This is the rest of what David was going to say. I would like to see our community theater maintained as a family-friendly location where people go to eat popcorn and junior mints and enjoy a lemonade. I strongly urge the council to vote on a proclamation opposed to this application. I also urge you, the council, to work with the theater owner to identify other revenue streams so that the theater can remain viable for years to come. I personally would support a raise in ticket or concession prices so that the owner can be successful while also supporting our community's interest in keeping the theater alcohol-free. I've spoken to many other area residents who feel the same way. Let's begin to reshape our community norms with this issue and then get to work on the other factors that are impacting our youth in Fairfax and San Anselmo. So I'm one of the other area residents that he's spoken to, and I want to talk to you directly. Because,
excuse
can I do that?
me, you
Not
have
allowed?
you
Okay.
talk to the council directly.
Okay, but I'm going to ask, because I know that the theater owner is here, Corky?
His name is Mr. Corco, and he'll
Mr.
be
Corco.
speaking at the end.
Okay, fine. I would just appeal to him, even though he may not himself live in this community, he does belong to the community because through his theater. So he can have a significant impact. And I appeal to him to be our hero, be our good guy, and help us with a problem that he may not have been aware of, but which is huge, a huge affliction here. It's one place, this theater is one place where kids go, where they don't go to get high on anything. Let's let them keep this place where they don't have to be thinking about any drugs or anything, or alcohol, or anything except the movies they're watching. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Bob, did you want to speak? If you could state your name and address and your affiliation. If Garrett, did you get that under control?
I'll just read this.
Excuse me.
I'll just read this.
Can you give your name?
Yes. I'm Bob Kopelman, and I live at 321 Cypress Drive. I serve as the executive director of the Fairfax Chamber of Commerce, but I'm speaking tonight as an individual resident of Fairfax because I deeply care about this issue. Tomorrow night I'm going to the graduation of my grandson from White Hill Middle School. I really do care about this problem of drinking affecting our youth in a very personal way. The protest, the protest over granting of an ABC license to the Fairfax Theater revolves around the notion that any additional venue or activity in town where adults can drink alcoholic beverages will contribute to the teen drinking problem here. And conversely, denying the permit will be one positive step towards addressing this issue. Hence the impassioned letter-writing campaign. The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, which is a division of the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, has published a document called Strategies to Prevent Underage Drinking. There are 24 key strategies presented in this document, and none of them involve elimination or preventing the licensing to sell alcoholic beverages commercially. None. There are 4 components of the strategy. There's school strategies, and there's 10 of those listed. There's extracurricular strategies, 5 of those. Family strategies, 6 of those. And finally, policy community strategies, of which there are 3, which are increase excise taxes, make sure the minimum legal drinking age is 21, and finally, citizen action to reduce commercial and social availability of alcohol through compliance with existing laws about serving alcohol to those under 21. So let me repeat, the NIH does not recommend or sanction the idea of limiting commercial licensing as an effective way to reduce underage drinking, period. It advocates compliance with drinking age laws, not reducing the number of venues for adults to drink alcohol. So this letter writing campaign against granting Fairfax Theater an ABC license is not pursuing a recognized strategy to effectively help our teens. In fact, I find it to be a disservice to our community precisely because it diverts energy from actual effective solutions. Denying an ABC license is not part of an effective strategy. It's a feel-good moment substitute for effective engagement with this problem. It lulls people, especially concerned parents, into feeling that they've done something when actually they've achieved nothing towards really helping their children. There's no evidence and no reason to believe that this anti-ABC license approach will actually help our teenagers in any effective way. Let's put our energies into strategies that work. I urge all the people who have written letters against granting the ABC license to Fairfax Theater to spend 15 minutes with Google and read up on this for themselves. It will change your minds. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
I'm Reverend Beverly Brewster. I'm the pastor of Sleepy Hollow Presbyterian Church, and I live at 411 Cascade Drive in Fairfax. I think that all of us have enough collective wisdom to know what it's like to try to not drink when everybody around you is drinking. I myself come from a family of problem drinkers, and also am very familiar with how difficult it is for people in recovery and people who are trying to abstain to be surrounded by people who are using drugs and alcohol. So regardless of what that page on the NIH website said, I think we know from our common sense that for anyone of any age to try to live without drugs and alcohol is difficult in a society where they're completely surrounded and getting the message from our culture every single day that you have to use drugs and alcohol to be able to have fun, that you have to be able to have drugs and alcohol at your instant access. You couldn't possibly go to a movie for 2 hours without being able to order a beer. I mean, that's a very strong message that we're giving to our town's citizens of all ages. So I would simply say that we have a health crisis here. We have a public health crisis in our town. Our statistics show it. Our youth drug and alcohol abuse are way worse than even our neighboring towns in Marin County. And that really does fall upon our elected leaders to help do something to put us into the solution. We're really looking to you. We know that this is a jurisdictional issue and it's a business issue, and it's not something that the town wants to interfere with anyone's business model. And at the same time, the statistic that the principal of White Hill School brought to us, which is that we are way over the national average here in our town of Fairfax in terms of liquor licenses per 1,000 people, That's a really important statistic, and that is a very likely explanation, in part, for why we have a public health crisis. So I appeal to you as our town's officials to do whatever creative solutions you can do to help this to be a more safe and a healthy town for all ages. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sarah, if you could state your name and address, please.
23 Manor View. You just stated my name, so I don't think I need
Sarah
to do
Solomon?
that. Yeah.
Okay.
This is all pretty interesting. It's like we go to a movie, and what do we see? We see a bunch of violence. We see a bunch of drinking. We get assaulted by really, really pretty loud sound and total overstimulation. And then we have the business model of a theater, which, from what I've been told, most of their profits come from selling popcorn and drinks and candy, which, to my mind, is mostly just garbage and toxic and adds to overstimulation and mental deficit and obesity and malnutrition and strokes and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, you could say, why are we going to movie theaters to watch a bunch of violent stuff and eat a bunch of crap? And hey, I actually, you know, enjoy going to movies and getting overstimulated watching all this stuff, but to me it has nothing to do with reality, but at the same time it's affecting reality. I started out pretty much knee-jerk opposed to selling alcohol at theater, and I've listened, you know, I've put it up on Facebook and had conversations with a lot of people in terms of people talking about going out to a movie at an art house and having a glass of wine or, you know, some cheese or some nice food or whatever. And there's something nice about that. And at the same time, why do we have to drink alcohol everywhere? And why do we have to, you know, get high or do all this other stuff? And to a degree, I really like the whole conversation. To me, it's not about the theater selling alcohol. It's more about our whole container and the whole community. There's a gentleman named Johan Hari who wrote a book called Chasing the Scream, which I highly recommend to anybody and everybody. It's about basically addiction and the war on drugs. And just one snippet from that is most of us have probably heard about putting rats in a cage with heroin and the rats all overdose and die, correct? You've heard that? You can take those same rats and put them in a bigger cage with other rats and toys and food and things to play with, and those rats aren't going to OD on heroin. They're going to stay away from it. You know, people go to war, go to Vietnam, go to Iraq, whatever, they get strung out, they get addicted, they're on heroin, they're on all kinds of things. They come back and they stop taking. Why is it? Because it's the cage, it's the container. And what's going on is the container of our whole society. We happen to live in Fairfax, which is one of the cheapest places to live in an exceptionally expensive place to live. And if that's not stress on the whole system, I don't know what is. How do we address our container and our cage? How do we address affordable housing, places to live? How do we address having children that aren't totally stressed out, looking at the, you know, fairly successful parents stressed out paying bills and chasing our tails and driving around? That's the cage that we live in. How do we address that, and how do we have that conversation? It's not really about whether some place sells alcohol or not. It's like, why do we choose to do it?
Thank you, Sarah. Other speakers? Or I guess no other speakers other than Mr. Corkle. Did you want to come up and share with us some of your ideas for the theater? We appreciate you coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, council members. For those people who say Dave's not a resident of Fairfax, he doesn't know what's going on here, trust me, I've been here for 20 years.
Mr. Corkle, you're supposed to talk to the council. They can hear you.
Okay.
I know it's difficult.
Well, there's two components here. One is to address you, and the other is to address them, because that's why we're here, really. They want to hear what I have to say, and I want you to hear what I have to say as well.
Okay.
So I'll start with what I have to say to you. And what I have to say to you is, really, you have a choice tonight about what to do with your action. You can take no action, or you can take an action to endorse a letter to ABC on their protest form to say stop the license from being issued to the Fairfax Theater, or you can do whatever you want to do. But what I'm here to ask you to do is to not take an action, because I don't think that would be appropriate. I think if another business in Fairfax, for instance, a restaurant came into town and said, for instance, Mike Garangelli, for many years, let's say he operated his pizza parlor, and one day another pizza parlor opened down the street and was selling beer and wine and whatever other things that they were selling, and he looked at his business and said, I'm going to be out of business unless I can effectively compete with that business and sell the same things, because my customers are going to go down the street and they're going to buy what that business has to sell, not what I have to sell. So I think that since ABC governs the issuance of alcohol licenses in Fairfax, that they ought to be the party that makes the decision or not about whether a license is issued. We have heard, since we've posted our premises, we've heard from many, many customers who walk in the door and say, what are you going to be doing? The number of people that say you shouldn't be doing this versus the number of people that support what we're doing are 10 to 1 in favor of what we want to do. And that's what our theater manager tells us, and that's what I hear personally from being down there and talking to people that ask the questions, not that we ask to say, what do you have to say? Yes, there's an organized protest about this, and yes, all of the forms that you received were all printed from one person who said, here's the template, modify it in your favor to say whatever suits and represents you properly, and then forward it on to those people who are me and you and ABC. So I would ask you to not take an action, because I don't think it would be appropriate. It would be not precedented in Fairfax for the town council to write a letter to ABC and say, stop the licensing of any business. In fact, ABC, when they met me in Tiburon to do my final inspection 2 weeks ago, and I told them the license in Fairfax is going to be controversial. This is before Mr. Fernand's email went out. I said, the license in Fairfax is going to be controversial. We're going to go to 2 hearings. We're going to be dealing with this for a year. So don't worry about what the food preparation area looks like, because it's going to take us a long time to get through the process. I expect it. That's just the way Fairfax is. So here we are, and I'm asking you to not take those steps to write a protest letter to ABC, because I don't think it properly represents the community, and I think that your role is to represent the whole community, not a certain segment, and I don't think you'd be doing that if you did. Now,
I wonder, Mr. Corco, one of the things your letter kind of covered some of what you want to do with the theater, and I think that's really important for us to hear. Yes. Is, you know, how you want this to work on a day-to-day basis. I think that's important for everyone to hear.
Sure, absolutely. Our industry is changing, and our industry a few years from now, like a few years ago, didn't have digital projectors, and now it does. When I came to Fairfax in 1995, I was called to a meeting by all the activists in Fairfax that could come out of the woodwork to say, we don't want you to change from a discount movie theater to a first-run movie theater. It just isn't Fairfaxian to do that. So here we are today, looking at the business model for movie theaters going forward. We want to sell an entirely different, improved experience to our customers. And that starts with the type of seating in the auditoriums, the size of the auditoriums. We're thinking right now about taking the small theater out that we have and expanding the big theater into back to its original state. And all of the seats will have little swinging tables that you can put your popcorn, soda pop, a glass of wine, or whatever else that you're buying from our concession counter or from a server in the auditorium. We have no intention of serving alcohol and having servers run around in a children's movie and say, here, buy this. That isn't what we intend to do. We don't support children's or youth consumption of alcohol in any way, shape, or form. That's not our business model. So our model is to be able to serve the adults that come to our business that are growing in movie-going attendance, and while the children's segment of our business is shrinking, we don't want to be a newspaper. We want to stay in business. So how do we attract people to our theater? We offer more amenities. Food, and in order to serve food, most people that go to a restaurant, I'm sorry, they like to have a glass of wine, or maybe they like to have a beer. That's what restaurants offer. We're applying for a Type 41 license to serve food and to serve beer and wine, and to also serve the things that we serve now. And hopefully the customers that come and appreciate that experience they will continue to come more often, and they won't drive to the freeway to get that experience. So we will follow all of the rules and more that we will implement to make sure that children's consumption of alcohol does not occur. The last time I looked, it was a penalty punishable by imprisonment and a fine. I don't think parents or adults want to take an alcoholic beverage and give it to their child. And there are going to be many seats in our auditoriums that you can choose to sit in. You don't have to sit in an adult movie when most people are perhaps consuming alcohol like 50 Shades of Grey, because the industry's experience and my personal experience is that when people buy a movie ticket for Inside Out, they don't buy a drink. The parents don't buy a drink, and nobody buys a drink. The number of alcoholic beverages sold in a children's movie, when voluntary rules are in place where alcohol consumption is permitted in that movie, are nearly zero. That's the fact. So the chance of your child sitting next to an adult drinking a beer in Inside Out are about zero, even if we served alcohol in that auditorium.
So did any of the council members have questions for Mr. Corkle, if you don't mind?
Go ahead.
Peter?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Corkle. I was just kind of curious what the new theater, you gave us a little view of what your vision for the new theater. Were you planning to provide service in the theater, or would people still come out to the lobby to get a glass of wine or beer?
Initially, our plan will be to serve popcorn, soda pop, an alcoholic beverage or food in the auditorium and take orders for those meals and then serve them to the customer. If that doesn't work, then we would revert to simply having our concession counter with the same service. But again, ABC's rules require supervision of consumption in our auditorium. So we have to have somebody that is supervising those auditoriums, and we have to have the lighting at a proper level, and we have to have the cups that we serve the alcohol in be an easily identifiable and discernible cup as compared to those that are served with any other beverage.
Does that mean that you have to have someone in each movie theater during the whole movie?
Not during the whole movie, but we have to have people moving around to manage the supervision. There are a number of things that we're looking at doing, again, on a voluntary basis to manage that. We can put an infrared camera in the theater. We can ask the customer to wear a wristband. There are many options that we're looking at, and we'll choose whatever the right ones are. Because again, it takes one violation if we're not doing our job properly, and we don't get to have this license anymore. So this is a privilege, not something that is a right, and we have to follow the rules, and we have to enforce the rules, and we have to make sure that our customers are safe, the children that attend our theater are safe, and everybody is safe that attends our theater.
And then my understanding is that anyone selling alcohol, beer and wine, they have to be at least 18. It seems like a lot of the kids working there are under 18. Are you going to have a separate line for beer and alcohol? I'm just curious how.
Yeah, well, most of the people that work for us are over 18. ABC's rules are that a bartender must be 21 years of age or older. That's the person that pours the beverage. And a person that is between 18 and 21 can serve the beverage that is poured by the bartender to the customer. But most likely we'll be having a separate section where we have where we serve alcohol, and that person will at the counter, if we're serving at the counter, that person will be 21 and over. We'll be both the server and the bartender at the same time.
And are you planning these upgrades for all the theaters, or just a few of them?
All of them. All of them are. Our intention is to put the nice seats in all the auditoriums, perhaps remodel or reconfigure the size of one of them, and reduce from 6 to 5 screens, and have like I said, the big grand auditorium back that that we would like to do. And we'll offer reserved seating so that you can look at your seat, choose it ahead of time, whether it's online or at the box office, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
So, Renee, do you have questions?
Yeah, I do. I was just looking at the your application. Actually, this isn't your application, but it's a similar application that was enclosed in our packet.
Well, I believe those are the conditions for an application that were for
Actually, I'm sorry.
Else.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. I apologize. But I was confused about a couple of spots. In number 2 and number 3, you probably don't have it in front of you. So number 2, in the conditions says that all sales and service of alcoholic beverages for consumption in the general spectator seating area shall be made only from the concession stands, portable stands, or bars, or fixed bars, and shall not be sold, so delivered to customers, and so on. And then you go to number 4, and it says, notwithstanding conditions 2 and 3 above, alcoholic beverages may be sold or served by waiters and waitresses in the general spectator seating areas under the following conditions. So I'm not quite sure how that fits with what it is that you're planning to do, and what I'm hearing right now is that you do plan to have what they call hawkers, I guess, to circulate.
No, a hawker is something you would see at a baseball game.
They just use the word here, that's why.
They use the word there, but they say notwithstanding the above. So that's the primary entrance to paragraph number 4, or condition number 4 on that license. That, by the way, is a standard set of movie theater conditions that is now used by the Department of ABC for all alcoholic beverage licenses that are applied for by movie theaters in the state of California. Our trade organization was successful a couple of years ago in going to Sacramento, meeting with the head of ABC, and going through what works and doesn't work for movie theaters, and that's what you see there. The hawkers, yeah, you can't do that. I mean, that means you walk into an auditorium and say, I've got beer to sell, or I've got something else to sell. And that's not what a server does in a restaurant, and that's not what our servers will do in our restaurant, because we're applying for a Type 41 license, which is what that is. So for all of those who don't know, this set of conditions will be identical to the set of conditions ABC will suggest be imposed on the Fairfax Theater for operating its with its ABC license.
I also wanted to ask you about the separation of the popcorn candy stand from a bar facility, or one that sells different forms of food. Is that something that you're planning to do?
Our concession counter is 40 feet long, and we're planning on segmenting it, and we're planning on putting in a gelato case, so we're going to be adding gelato to be served, or Three Twins organic ice cream, and one end of it will actually have a case with paninis and whatever else we're selling, and we will also serve from a wine dispenser and a beer dispenser at that point.
Okay,
so yes, we're going to segment our concession counter so that we can sell different things in different places.
Okay, and food would be, I think with a Type 41, it needs to be considered a bona fide kitchen, eating establishment, and that means a kitchen on the premises?
It no longer does, but I won't get into what ABC does or doesn't consider to be a bona fide food preparation place, which is one of those things that is there.
Yeah, the ABC stuff is pretty complicated with 86 different types of licenses.
Yes.
Other questions, John?
Sure. Hi, Dave. So basically, I see a different business model coming for, you're trying to reinvent things to try to stay profitable. And it appears basically by having bigger seats in the same size room, you're going to have fewer of them.
Yes.
Right. So, and then there's tables in between, kind of on the big armrests is what it looks like from the pictures. And I guess that's a typical installation that you're thinking about doing. How much of the theater are you anticipating converting that way?
All of the auditoriums will be
the
converted.
Whole thing
Will be converted.
So basically, people have the option of ordering food or whatever, or not, but the whole thing is going to be reserved seating, kind of.
Right.
So how does the number of seats add up?
Well, it's interesting because our industry has found that by reducing the number of seats by 40% and not raising the admission price, and offering more amenities, that attendance goes up between 40 and 75% because people like the experience more. And because there's a value to not raising the price and offering more amenities, people go to the movies more often. In 1998, people put stadium seating in movie theaters and created a whole different experience, and all of a sudden attendance went way up, and people said, gee, you're going to lose 20% of your seats to do that because you've got to put extra aisles in and stairways and aisles to the stairways, and everybody worried about that. But at the end of the day, we sold many more tickets because the experience was better. And so here we are today with declining movie theater attendance, and how do we rejuvenate it? And our industry has found a way, and offering better seats and more amenities is the way.
Yeah. So you're not going to change the ticket price. You're just trying to make it more attractive and fill up all the seats all the time.
Right. We've had the lowest prices in Marin County since in the last 20 years, and we're going to keep it that way, whether we have nice seats or not.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess, yeah, I have problems with that. I mean, whatever, I can make other comments later too, but.
Renee, did you have another question? Oh, David, did you have a question?
I do, but Renee, go ahead.
Go ahead. Turn your button
Yeah,
on.
no, I was just curious what you would do on the Saturday night opening of a big movie that's completely all about kids, and they line up down the block, which I love. I think truly with what you've created there and the family accessible nature of that corner, I can't imagine how you're going to line up, I don't know what the capacity of one of your theaters is, but let's say 300 kids who want to line up like Dr. Haney, the orthodontist, buys out the theater and, invites all of his patients to come down. And I'm trying to imagine these little kids sitting in these big armchairs, and it's just the model right now is making me feel, sad, really, because of that draw and that happiness that goes on there. I think the Scoop and the theater are like, we just want to hold it precious.
I agree. I'm proud to be the owner of that theater. I'm a very lucky guy. But at the end of the day, last year our ticket sales dropped by $100,000. That's 8%. And this year they're going to drop another couple percent. And next year they're going to do the same thing. And like newspapers, you go away if you don't reinvent yourself. And I'm sorry that we can't stay the same forever. And like I said in my letter, not changing anything is free. I'd love to not have the most capital-intensive business in town that has to keep spending money and investing money and changing itself every couple of years. It's real expensive. It costs a lot of money. But the reality is that, like I said, in 1995, the Blumenfields called me and said, would you like to take over the theater because we're losing money? And I did. And I had to fight with the film companies and get first-run movies and all those things, and we changed it. But it's been a yo-yo for 20 years. We go up in attendance and we go down, depending on what we do to reinvent ourselves. And we're constantly investing money to do that. And so I'm here today to say I want to invest another $500,000 in my business to make it better and to keep Fairfax proud of having the best theater in Marin County. But, there's only so much I can do. And, I just don't think you, as a group of people, should be opposing me. So, as a group, you can individually, I think you can do whatever you want. I mean, it's a free town. I'm proud to be here because everybody gets to voice their opinion, and everybody's got a great opinion, whether it's to agree with me or not. So, and you're one of them, Renee.
Thank you. David, did you have a question?
Yeah, before we get into the larger issue, I think you all asked really good questions. In fact, you asked the ones that I would ask. I think there's one thing, though, that we should know here, which is, and we sit here and people come up and they talk to us over the months, and we take the measure of their sincerity and their character. So I would like to return us to the 1990s when Dave came here. I remember I'd just been appointed to the Planning Commission in 1996, and Dave came and expressed how he wanted to upgrade the theater and bring it into the modern era. I sat there with even to this day, I can't believe what they threw at you at that day. It went on for hours. The things that people said to you, astounding that you took it with the equanimity that seems to be the hallmark of how you are as a person. But I recall one thing, from that evening. You said, somebody said, well, will you make your theater available? You were going to put a couple of extra screens in at that time. Will you make it available for community events? You said yes. So I was sitting there going, okay, let's try the full extent of that. So I remember, I think it was the next day, I called you up. I said, hey, can I run a film festival? And I to this day, I tell people, I just don't think that there was any space between the question and the answer, which was sure. And then for 11 years we ran this thing, and occasionally we sold out, and you got half of the sellout, and sometimes nobody showed up, and you got half of nothing. And during that time period, I never heard you say anything other than, seems to be going okay. People seem to like it. Staff was great at the theater, and congratulations and keep up the good work. Until my patience and time and obligations, this job, swallowed that. And so when I sit here and I consider what you're saying is that everything you've said over the years has been honest, truthful. And so if you say to me sitting here that you will take all steps necessary, so the law notwithstanding the heavy hand which would come down upon you should you fail to keep alcohol from minors, I know that you would run this thing, from your track record, I know that you would run this thing with sincerity and an attention to the concern of the community about alcohol and kids. And we'll get into the alcohol and the kids at a later part of this conversation, I'm sure. But as per you, I see somebody who has lived up to his promises and his obligations and to this town. And to me, that carries tremendous weight.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. I want to say that people have asked all the questions I had. One was about were the ticket prices going to go up and were all the theaters going to be changed. I also want to say that I was at the theater on Sunday with one other person in the theater with me who said to me, are you sure we're in the right movie? So I continue to love that theater, and I go, and unless it's an opening night, frequently there's very few people in the theater. So when you say your ticket sales have gone down $100,000, I have no track record except anecdotally I've seen that it's a great place to go to the theater. We can walk to the movies. It's wonderful. I lived in San Anselmo many years ago and saw that theater go away, which was a great thing for the neighborhood as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing the council have more discussion. I guess there's no more questions for you, Mr. Corkle, but we're going to bring this back to the council and we'll have a discussion, and hopefully everyone will stay and listen to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, I think we're at a point where we need to kind of decide on next steps, and who would like to speak first? I see. Go ahead.
Peter started last time, so I'll start it on this side. It seems fair. I find it a couple of things. One is, I guess a personal note, if the alcohol industry was relying on me, it would have gone out of business quite some years ago. I'm just not somebody who appreciates or partakes all that much. And so it's from that perspective, or from that touchstone, that I would really like it if we did not have alcohol, not just there, but in many other venues that we have. And so I hate to bring up the past, which accentuates the ever-graying mass on my face, but some 9 years ago I was sitting here as a very young council member in this very seat, and as I recall, we invited a member, somebody from the county, to come and talk about youth and alcohol. It was a large issue then, as it is today. And I remember he came with a sheet of recommendations, and one of the recommendations was, well, in town-sponsored events, you really shouldn't be promoting alcohol. So we invited this representative from the county. He spoke wisely. He brought an important document, and I said to myself, well, bullet point number 6 there is don't have town events with alcohol. So I took it upon myself to suggest that the Fairfax Festival be devoid of alcohol. To this day, I'm still pulling the thorns out of my behind. And the same sort of vitriol that Mr. Corkle enjoyed from the town I enjoyed from many members of the community as well as a result of that. And so I find it odd that we come here today to draw the line in the sand at the Fairfax Theater. The festival this past weekend, only the chief reported, only 2 DUI, 4 arrests for alcoholic overconsumption, if my memory is correct, which is tremendous. Used to be worse. But still, a lot of alcohol, and certainly all the kids that went there saw what was going on. And so I was listening to your comments. Where does this come from? It's incumbent upon us as parents to model behavior. It's not incumbent upon Dave Corkle. It's not incumbent upon the town council. I agree with Principal Fanon. To a degree, it is teachers stand, as married to one, stand shoulders above so many others in the community, and they represent a voice that should be heard and respected on this issue. However, bottom line, it's parents' responsibility to ensure that their kids understand, as we all know, what is right, what is wrong, moral behavior, and all of that. Social norms, I think, was the way that the principal phrased it. I am also concerned that we draw the line at the sand at the Fairfax Theater when I think, 2 most family-friendly restaurants in this town serve alcohol. M&G's, I believe you can get a beer now. But the most family-friendly restaurant in town is the Brew Pub. Incredibly successful. I don't think it could be more successful. And yet, its entire business is based on alcohol, and here we troop our kids in for a burger, and parents sit there and drink. Interesting dichotomy to me. Again, it gets to why are we drawing the line in the sand here. I know he's appearing here just as a private citizen, but I'm reminded on behalf of the chamber, which I am a member, that we also have to nurture and promote the business community. And we have done, we could do a better job. Those who were watching carefully a few years ago saw there was an opportunity to bring or to promote or to encourage Phil Lesh to bring his Terrapin Crossroads establishment to Fairfax. Got hassled, didn't need it, getting on in years, took over the seafood peddler. I'm sure they're enjoying the $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year in tax revenue that we're not getting as a result of that. The gas station, we didn't want to sell gas at an old gas station. Community came out, they didn't like it. It's another 60, 80 grand a year we don't have. We have responsibilities here to pay for the services that you enjoy. Or in the converse, you could always tell us which services you don't like and we could just cut them. But at the moment, it is my understanding that everything that we do pay for, as modest as they are and as thankful as we are for the generous amounts that you provide, we're just cutting it here. And our expenses will forever go up. But where is the business that will provide the sales tax revenue that's going to keep up with the costs? I'm very concerned about that. In the absence of that, the only way we can sustain our modest services that we provide would be through ever-increasing tax increases, and nobody favors that. So in sum, I sit here and I see a business owner who has met every promise that he's made to us to run his establishment well. To say it's an anchor tenant is the understatement of the world. We could lose Scoops and it would not be a good day. We lose the theater, that's a dark day in this town. To promote that theater, to keep it going, to take the actions that are necessary, to rely on the rules and regulations that are imposed to ensure that there is absolutely no possibility that children will be able to break the law in this manner. I know that Corkle will run the theater as he has run it in the past in a responsible way. I just wish it wasn't so, but there are many things I wish weren't so. And I wish he didn't have to do this. But I take him at his word, and I will not support any letter or opposition to the ABC on this.
Thank you, David. Well said. John?
Yeah. Well, you touched on a lot of issues there. I mean, I think it is important, really, to have a successful theater. I mean, I'm reminded of seeing how the costs break down of basically when you buy a ticket to go into the theater, most of that money goes to overhead and to pay the distributors. And so if I like a theater, I always, even though it's not my favorite meal in the world, I buy a big thing of popcorn because I know that that's the thing that the theater is living on. It's disturbing to see how the theater business in general seems to be moving. You know, I haven't heard what kind of food you're thinking about serving. You know, maybe that can also be something that makes people pick your theater over a different one. Because if every theater is going this direction of having the big seats and trying to sell them all out every time, I should think that that would be a good way to differentiate yourself. I mean, because Fairfax, one of the things Fairfax is known for is restaurants. And, you know, you can get some pretty interesting food. I wish there was a few more varieties available in town. It pains me to see the Chinese restaurants going, but I think that's a bigger trend than really what we can influence here. I mean, you can't make anybody start or continue to run a business that's going to lose money. I mean, it's just not, it doesn't work that way. So we do have to live in the real world. But I also think there's a lot of creative ways that you can differentiate yourself and be successful in that real world. And converting the entire theater to the industry norm, which, you know, seems like, I mean, who knows what the menu is going to be, and maybe Dave, you could talk about that, or what thoughts you've had about that. You know, because if it's burgers and fries, you can pretty much get those anywhere.
I think you mentioned paninis and Three Twins ice cream, but we're not going to bring Mr. Corporal back.
Okay.
We're at
well,
council
you know, it's fancy
deliberations.
sandwiches, and yeah, I mean, it's nice to have a bit of back and forth, but you know, I also have problems with converting the whole theater to that, and you know, I mean, I'm not in the theater business, but I think Renee's comment of, you know, on opening night, there's a line down the block of people that are packing that theater. Obviously, every night is not an opening night, or Friday night or whatever, and that's, you know, I have also been in the theater where it's been pretty close to empty, and it's worrying just to see that, and you hope that, you know, you can make ends meet that way, and it appears you can't. I would like to see some middle ground, some creative thing where, you know, alcohol is restricted to a different section. I mean, you go down to Ross Valley Brewing Company, and there's a wall down the middle, and on one side of that wall, it's a bar. I mean, basically, it's crowded with a lot of people, especially, I mean, I don't go in there then, it's too crowded, I can't hear a thing. But it's basically a bunch of people drinking beer. The other side of that wall is families sitting down, kids around tables, and that's a way to make that model work. Yes, alcohol is available for adults to be bought in both sides of that, but there's definitely an attempt made to serve things that kids like and try to have that family atmosphere, and segregation works there. You know, I wouldn't want my kid in a bar. My kid's now 21, but he still doesn't go to bars. You know, and that's a choice he, as now an adult, gets to make, and I'm happy that, you know, hopefully modeled good behavior, and he's, you know, he's chosen not to be an alcoholic. But I would like to see some kind of middle ground there, you know, instead of just going with the whole trend of what's everywhere. Because there are a lot of people that like to be in an atmosphere where it's not a bar scenario or even a restaurant scenario, and watch a first-run movie. I mean, it pains me to see the industry go this way, and I would hope that in going forward there would be a way that you could split things up.
Thank you, John. Renee?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Mr. Corkle, so much for showing up and giving us the plan and letting us know. And I think, and I hope you heard from the community and from us so far, that there is nothing but a desire to work together here. And the value that, you know, the role that you play in the community is, you know, without say, a very important one. Having said that, I'm not, you know, this whole idea that we would go with the real world, which is now Starbucks is going to serve alcohol after 4 p.m. and Taco Bell has decided that they should take it up because why shouldn't a drive-through actually have a beer sales? We just sort of are in this flood mode of being oversaturated. Now, ABC has, I went on to study ABC and called ABC and got as much information through Garrett as I could about ABC, and it is the most incredibly complicated thing. I can't imagine how many state employees have to be employed to make that thing run, but that's something I would like to talk about going forward, because I think that this town needs to have some policy going forward as to how we deal with this saturation and where it's appropriate and where it's not. And most cities, not our size, but most cities have some form of zoning that allows for and has a way to look into challenging the density of the outlets. We don't have any of that. So at this point right now, I go to your theater as much as humanly possible. But I do understand, because when you had the 940 movies, I used to go in there at 9:40 and I'd escape from everything and I'd go sit down right smack dab in the middle of the theater and I'd be the only one in there. And it was scary, actually. But then I missed it terribly. So I understand the challenge. What I don't understand is why we haven't, and with us sort of in collaboration, looked for a way through this without going directly to the real world, so to speak. I feel as though this community, if any community, we have the most artists, we have the most people looking for ways to you know, apply their creativity. We have food buffs. We have people who would pay big bucks for good food. You are no longer doing movies at 7:20. You're doing them at like 6:40. I can't get my kids fed. I send them down there. I know they're going to eat Milk Duds for dinner. And I would give them $20 to have dinner. I mean, I know that sounds like excessive, but it's true. Places like the Brew Pub, love that place. Love it. But I go in so that I can have a beer and then we eat. So I wouldn't send my kids by themselves to the Brew Pub. That would just look really weird if there was a whole table of kids. I see teenagers in there sometimes, and I think, huh. So there are so many creative folks who care so deeply about your business in this town. I'm right there on top. And I can't imagine that we couldn't sit down and at least start a conversation about how we might make this work without the alcohol, with the community support. I've had people say, what about even, and I've been talking to a lot of folks, because I know a lot of people aren't here, I know a lot of people don't write letters, it's not on most people's radar. And someone said, why not have the weekdays be alcohol? And then when the kids are flooding through there on the weekends, you've got an alcohol-free theater, and they can enjoy good food. Date nights, there's a lot of things. So basically, I'm not going to go on and on here, but what I wanted to ask and really hope we can do is create some form of a subcommittee where council members and very concerned and very supportive community members can come together and sit down with you, and I'm not quite sure how we would organize it officially, but if the council would be willing to support something like that, that would be my invitation. Because as it stands right now, I would be supporting a proclamation opposed. I would not protest ABC. I do not want to interfere that way, but I am opposed. So this group of people has done an extraordinary amount of work, and they're sort of the representatives to the whole Ross Valley Healthy Community Collaborative and working very closely with the county on dealing with the on-the-ground, in-the-trenches issues that are facing us. I think it was Beverly. Did you say be our hero? Was that you that said that? Somebody said, Mr. Corkill,
we're
be
not
our
inviting
hero.
more public comments.
I was just asking for an
Okay.
affirmative. Anyway, maybe Kelsey. Anyway, somebody said that, and it struck me as something very important, because you are playing a hero role here in our community with all the things you've done, as David said, and I want to acknowledge you for that. But please give us an opportunity to have at least a conversation, bring people together, we'll do the homework, figure out some really, well thought out, economically viable, at least in our minds, way of looking at this going forward. That would be my request.
Thank you. Peter, did you want to comment?
Well, I'm very torn. I was very took to heart the message from all the folks opposed to it and the very good public policy reasons for it. Mr. Finnan makes a very good point about the prevalence of alcohol abuse among teens is really alarmingly high here. And that's kind of in contrast to sort of the healthy lifestyles that seems to be sort of the social norm in Marin versus other communities. And I think there is something to be said about the drinking environment that is so prevalent that Don Carney mentioned. And, in the concept of environment prevention, in other words, decoupling alcohol from other activities. And we know that that's a very effective gateway to alcohol and tobacco abuse, because beer companies and tobacco companies spend millions of dollars a year, advertising, trying to link those things to youth activities. So these are all extremely valid points. And, when we talk about alcohol saturation, if you look at that entire block of Broadway with the theater, from corner to corner, every establishment there serves alcohol. So that's a concern. I suppose a protest could be based on the concept that we're a overserved or oversaturated community with alcohol. And that is very concerning. And it's a bigger community issue. It's a bigger social issue. But for some reason, this particular community that we are in really seems to be saturated with alcohol consumption and so forth. So these are all really very, very important concerns. And I also understand the problems with trying to run a theater and keep the doors open. Technology is changing so quickly on that front. The cover of the Pacific Sun this week is all about how Netflix has completely changed things. They're not only challenging movie theaters, movie studios, but cable television, Comcast. So streaming video has really changed things. And the metaphor with newspapers and the internet is very, very appropriate too. I personally think the decline in movie theater attendance has more to do with Hollywood and the terrible movies that keep coming out. But I'm a film critic of one. So, Mr. Corkill, I do understand the financial pressures of trying to adapt, and it's an interesting business model. It makes sense in a way. I mean, most nights most movies, a lot of those seats are empty, so it seems like you've done your homework. Economically, it makes more sense to upgrade the seats, have fewer of them, and on the whole, you'll bring in, you'll bring in more people. And there is, for me, a real tug of nostalgia, like, no, I mean, whatever happened to, the Saturday matinee and the sort of more community experience of everyone coming out to watch the same movie. But those days may be gone economically, just the same way that Netflix is changing everything. So I'm very torn. I'm very grateful for the outpouring of community concern for alcohol, and I think that is good. I don't think I would support a motion for a protest letter. I don't know that that's the best tool, and I don't know that, unfortunately, even though alcohol is so prevalent, I don't know that necessarily limiting the theater and its the way it wants to serve food and alcohol with the movies. I don't know if that's necessarily that drastically different than the experience of serving beer with a hamburger, where it would justify taking that additional step. I'm saddened by it. I really am. I would much rather the theater could stay the way it is. But in terms of taking that extra step of protesting it, I wouldn't go that far. If I had a magic wand, or I might suggest maybe not serving alcohol in some of the theaters, or doing some kind of mix, but that's kind of me thinking out loud and how I would maybe like to see some kind of a compromise. So it's an unfortunate problem. I don't know that this particular tool with this particular business is the best way to address it, though. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So I want to say that I would never have a drink in that theater, but I've never had a drink in any venue in Fairfax. So I'm of the mind that if we would not serve any alcohol, it would be a better place. But I am concerned that we appear to be using the theater as kind of the place to hang our hats on. I'm really sympathetic to the fact that there's so much teen drinking or preteen drinking, and I think the Healthy Collaborative, I'm not sure exactly the title, is really working on those issues. And I think Bob Koppelman pointed out that there are different ways to approach this. I don't think the theater is the right place, and I'm also a little surprised because it's my understanding that M&G Burgers got an ABC license about a month or two ago. Little League goes there, St. Rita's, Altar Boys and Girls go there. It's another venue which a lot of kids go to, so I'm surprised that this didn't come up sooner. But that being said, I would say I do not know the theater business, and I think we're very fortunate to have this theater in our town. I was here when the theater changed, and I was one who thought it was such a beautiful theater, leave it as is. But if it had stayed as is, it would have been gone, like the San Anselmo Theater, which is now an antique store. So I would have to put my trust in what Mr. Corkle has said. Is he's not going to raise the ticket prices, which are really inexpensive compared to other places, not by much, maybe $1. And also that ABC, I know, rules with kind of a heavy hand. But apart from that, I think Mr. Corkle has shown that he's been a good neighbor to our town and really supported a lot in our town. And I said earlier, I've been in that theater many times where there's only a couple of people. So the figure of 100,000 less in ticket sales is probably correct or on the money. So if we want to keep our theater here, I think I would not support an opposition. I'm not supportive of trying to get in the middle of Mr. Corkel's business model, but I would take it as word that he's committed to running this in a manner that will ensure that if there are kids there or teenagers, that they won't be consuming alcohol. So I feel that we should take no action as far as the ABC license, but ask Mr. Corkel to continue on his course and keep a theater in our community that I think most of us love and are happy to go to. So that's my feelings on the matter, and I think we should probably entertain a motion. I'm not sure who's ready to do that.
Actually, is it okay if I ask specifically a question of Mr. Corkel at this time? So,
Mr. Corkel, would you mind coming up to the microphone one more time?
this could end up being a yes or a no, so it could be taken care of with a nod. But I'm just wondering what it is. When I proposed this idea that we would form a small subcommittee or a little working group around this, would you be amenable to that?
Mr. Corkel, could you press the button because we're being filmed?
I'm sorry, I disagree with you.
You disagree with me about what?
It's really that simple about forming a committee and discussing it. I'm more than happy to talk to people individually. There are a number of people in this room that have communicated with me by email their protest. I've sent them the same letter that I submitted to the town, and we've had conversations by email. I've had conversations with people that have called me about it. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to listen to input. But in terms of forming a formal subcommittee and going through that route, I've been on this fence, as David said, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. I've developed tough skin when it comes to, unfortunately, when it comes to opposition for the things that we want to do, because, to be honest with you, everything we've done has been opposed. We've changed to digital projection, and people came out of the woodwork and said, why? 35 millimeter film is the way we want to see our movies in Fairfax. Why are you changing this? We're never going to go to your theater again. So anyway, that's just the reality. I'm sorry that I disagree with you, but I do.
That's
so,
okay.
There you go. Okay.
Well, thank you. So I would like to entertain a motion. As far as setting a separate subcommittee, I don't think we have the votes for that.
No, that's not what I was going to talk
about.
I heard you. Thank you. I'm wondering if I could ask my colleagues here, as we look forward, and I think Don Carney stated that, as you said, who was surprised that M&Gs came in and we didn't know about it?
Several people said that.
Right.
Yeah.
So my question is, it seems to me that we need to take a look at this policy-wise, since that's what we do, and look at the whole PCN thing, which is that owners can basically say this is a public necessity or convenience, and then that doesn't even go out to the public except for the application just posted on the business window. There are policies around in different cities and towns that really do stipulate some things to ABC as to what it is that needs to be under our local control, or at least our purview. So I would like to just see if you guys are up for the idea of agendizing something so that we can talk about policy going forward. Of course, it wouldn't affect anything that's already grandfathered in, and that is the last thing I want to do is affect our businesses. This is not my intention here, but I think going forward we do need to look at this saturation, and we have to start looking at how it is that they account for what it is they approve in our towns. So I would like to ask that we put it on a future agenda soon.
Yeah, I think we can do that, but I think given the next couple of meetings, and also to give staff time to look into it, I think we should consider September or October for really just evaluating the issue of what's called the PCN.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so something like that in the fall. With that, John?
May I say one thing here? I mean, hopefully, Mr. Corkel, you've been listening to the community here. I mean, you've been getting a lot of letters and feedback in the lobby of the theater and things like that. You seem to be evaluating different ideas on the business model going forward, and I would hope that you could, hear some of this and some of the suggestions made. to mix it up a little bit, whether that's, a kid-oriented screen or something like that, or whether it's dividing the theater to have close together seats that, kids seem to like to sit in the front, and, that might be a place where it's more kid-friendly and less alcohol-friendly, and a way to divide it up that way. And just looking at different business models going forward, obviously, you have to be the best judge of how to run your business. And but in Fairfax, we have a lot of creative problem-solving oriented people, and I would hope that you could glean something from that, in terms of some of the suggestions that are made. So.
Thank you, John. So I guess I would, let's see, so we'd like to, what am I doing?
Actually, if you choose, you don't have to make a motion if you're not going to take any action. I already have the item for the agenda, so there's no action needed for that.
Okay. So we can just resolve with no action. We don't need a motion for that. Okay, well, with that, I think I'll adjourn the meeting. And our next regular meeting of the Town Council is a little different date due to holidays, so our next regular meeting will be July 15th. Thank you, everyone.